All right. If it's okay with everyone, I think we should go ahead and begin.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Barda Ali and I will be your facilitator. My colleague Diana Elrod will present tonight on the draft 2020-25 Consolidated Plan and the 2020-2021 Annual Action Plan. The presentation is slated to be about 20 minutes long, after which Diana and I will present several frequently asked questions. And after the FAQs, we'll open it up to public comment. Please note that each commenter will have a total of 2 minutes to speak. And thank you for joining us, and we're really glad that you can make it. At this point, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Diana.
Great.
Let's start the meeting.
Okay, next slide. Thank you.
All right.
So what is the Consolidated Plan? It's a 5-year funding plan for federal entitlement programs, and you've probably heard of these before. They include CDBG, Home, HOPWA, and ESG. And what it does is it prioritizes investments in housing and community development. Next. So far, the city has convened a number of activities to gauge input and feedback on housing needs and the strategies, including, as you can see, all these items that have been taken on even as far back as 2018. The funding priorities went to neighborhood services and education and the Housing and Community Development Commission in March, and we began the public comment period for this consolidated plan on July 29th. Next. Of the outreach and engagement included 4 large tent community meetings, 21 focus groups and stakeholder meetings, pop-up tabling, an online regional survey, and we're including in our documentation all the feedback that we've received from all of our outreach efforts. And also the city has been involved with Santa Clara County Office of Education meetings to bring awareness around to some of the projects in the consolidated plan. Next. As you all know, we're online because of COVID-19 and not meeting in real person. On March 13th, a national emergency was declared. On March 16th, a shelter in place was ordered. On March 27th, the Federal CARES Act signed into law. This is funding specifically related to COVID impacts. On April 21st, the city provided its first substantial amendment to its existing annual action plan. That is spending of $6.7 million, reallocating it to fund projects and programs to address COVID impacts. And on July 1st, a second substantial amendment to its annual action plan was approved for almost $8.6 million, again, to reallocate funds to emergency use. Next slide, please. The CON plan requires cities and counties across the country to show the extent of the needs for lower income residents. And in San Jose, of the total households in the city, 45% are considered lower income. They earn below 80% of the median area income. Small families with 4 or fewer persons represent the largest share of extremely low income households, and that's 36%. And renters with housing problems like substandard housing, overcrowding, or paying too much for housing account for 63% of all households below the median with housing problems. And lastly, overcrowding is the 3rd highest housing problem experienced among lower income households. Next slide. We also have to do an analysis to look at the disproportionate outcomes by race and ethnicity. And we found some key findings here that are important to pay attention to and to address. The first is 28% of Black or African American households spend more than half of their income on housing costs. 25% of Latinx households spend more than half of their income on housing costs. And Pacific Islander residents and American Indian or Alaskan Natives report more housing problems than the average. Go ahead. In the 2020-2025 Consolidated Plan goals, the first 3 are similar to the goals in previous CON plans, including increasing housing and self-sufficiency, for homeless populations and prevention of homelessness, creating new affordable housing opportunities and preserve existing affordable housing, and promote fair housing and lower barriers to housing. Last one, the last goal is new. It's to strengthen and revitalize, strengthen and stabilize our community's condition and help improve residents' ability to increase their employment prospects and grow their assets. Helping households get a leg up in the world is an extremely important function that San Jose can do something about. Next slide. So of the total of funds that are available, you'll see in the first column for fiscal year 2021, they all add up between the various CDBG, Home, HOPWA, and ESG entitlement grants, plus the ESG CARES Act of $32.9 million, a total of over $47 million. With other funding sources, including prior year carryover and estimated program income, the total amount expected to be able to spend is about $53.9 million. Next, please. From the annual action plan, which is the first year of this new 5-year con plan, most investments will continue for 1 year. There are a number of new initiatives, however, that should be highlighted, including $850,000 for childcare, $2.1 million for Wi-Fi, a community Wi-Fi network. All these are to assist lower income households in gaining access to much needed support and services. Rental assistance, more than $2.6 million is going to be devoted to COVID-19 impacted excluded workers. This is in addition to other funds that have been used for this purpose. Addressing homelessness in total is about $36 million will be spent for the first year. And support for families, people often want to know, who all is being helped with these funding, and support for families specifically is on the order of $15 million. Next slide, please. The proposed CDBG activities are sort of summarized here. This equals the same amount that we had on the previous page. You can tell that on the left-hand column it says PS, that's public services. CDI is sort of more development related, which includes things like targeted code enforcement, minor home repair, etc. And then there's also grants management, which is what the city has to do in order to manage the funding that it provides and be able to report it back clearly to HUD. Next slide. The proposed home activities includes $7.8 million, including new affordable housing development, tenant-based rental assistance, program administration for contracts, subcontracts, and the city's also program administration for the home program in general. And fair housing services are being included in this category. Next. HOPWA activities, that's housing opportunity for people with AIDS. This will equal $1.4 million and includes rental assistance and supportive housing, grantee administration. This is funds that go to San Benito County, and then the administration of the program by the city. Next. The regular ESG program totals about $778,000, and you can see over the left-hand side the organizations that will be receiving this funds. Next, please. The $32.9 million in federal CARES Act funds, this is going to emergency solution grants type activities, and the city is implementing a new program called SOAR, which stands for Services, Outreach, Assistance, and Resources, that's in partnership with the EOC's office, the Beautify San Jose branch. This program will focus on people who are currently homeless. It's not, you can't use these funds for prevention of homelessness, but rather the funds have to be used for people who are already currently experience homelessness. And essentially the program is going to include 17 of the largest encampments, a total of about 600 people. These are encampments of about 50 persons per encampment. There are 3 main components to this, which is 1, street outreach and services. The city already does it, but it's going to do more with clinician and those with lived experience to help. Encampments will be given hygiene and infection control tools, including waste management efforts, and ensure the safety of the people in the encampments. And then lastly, the funding will allow for shelter and housing opportunities through a variety of programs, including rapid rehousing, motels, shelter beds, etc. Next slide. So here's how the funding shakes out for the proposed ESG SOAR program. The first segment you can see is for shelter and outreach, which is $3.4 million. The providers for these have already been identified. They have not been identified yet for some of the other categories. Those will have to be determined through an RFP process. The second category is hygiene and infection control, and that comes to almost $3.9 million. You can see this includes portable toilets and hand washing stations to help minimize transmission of disease. Next slide, please. And then the vast majority of the funds is going to housing related sources, including additional shelter beds, motel vouchers, emergency interim housing, bridge housing, rapid rehousing, a whole host of other activities totaling about $29.5 million. The administration of this program and these funds can go up to 10%, and that gets us to the total of 32.9. Well, it's 32.8. I said 9 earlier and I misspoke. Next slide, please. So the process right now is the city held its first public hearing before the city county this past Tuesday. Today we're doing this virtual public hearing, and the city council will do a public hearing and approval on August 11. We have to submit plans usually in a normal time. Cities generally submit their plans by May 15th, and obviously that deadline has been extended because of the difficulty that's been presented with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we will be submitting this plan to HUD on August 15th. Next slide. Do you want to do a Q&A with you and me first, or do you want to go to comments? Which do you prefer?
Let's go ahead and do the FAQs first,
Okay.
and dive into the comments. So we have compiled some frequently asked questions, and we'd like to share them with you all today. Diana, the first question that I have is, why is the city changing its fourth priority to the consolidated plan?
Well, one reason is instead of, it reflects the city's shift in focus from improving community infrastructure, sort of generally speaking, to improving the types of infrastructures that will help people improve their lives and grow their assets. In order to strengthen the economic resilience of residents, the plan's fourth priority highlights the city's shift to people first frame, providing services such as childcare, community Wi-Fi, small business supports to our most vulnerable populations, so they can improve their situations beyond just housing, that they can also have all these services attached to them. Obviously, this priority has become even more important since COVID-19 came on the scene, because we're relying on virtual connection with others, and that includes Wi-Fi, and a lot of people do not have it or can't afford it.
Thank you. The second question is, why are we still funding the priorities and programs carried over from the previous consolidated plan?
Some of these programs are in the category, the first 3 priority categories that it just makes sense to keep doing them. They're not all we're not throwing everything out. We can then start issuing RFPs though for some of the new work that has yet to be undertaken that we're proposing here. And 3 of the 4 priorities are the same. They agree that people agree that helping the homeless, creating more affordable housing, and addressing barriers to affordable housing, those continue to be problems that need to be addressed in the city.
Thank you. The third question is, how are high priority needs determined?
The priority needs are determined by a combination of factors, including a review of data sets that are provided by HUD that indicate what the lower income household population looks like in the city of San Jose. It also includes information gleaned from stakeholder and community meetings, from the survey, the regional survey, through intelligence collected from working groups for the community plan to end homelessness, which is a countywide effort, and the city's effort to do development citywide anti-displacement policy. We also had a number, as I mentioned in an earlier slide, a number of outreach opportunities with the community. And so all the feedback that we're receiving or have received from community members, either in this forum or other forums, is also part of the packet of information that goes into developing the priorities.
Thank you. The fourth question is, how does the city determine eligibility for federal funds?
Federal funds are basically coordinated in an attempt to address issues relating to lower income households. And people don't know what lower income means, but it basically means, for as an example, a family of 4 in San Jose earning about $112,000 is considered low income. I know that seems shocking, but the truth is that because of the cost of housing, because of the cost of living in general, this is a very high threshold for people to meet. So each federal funding source has its own criteria for the expenditures of funds and what population groups, but basically we're all looking at lower income households.
Will there be additional funding allocated for COVID-19 emergencies past fiscal year 2020-21, specifically in regards to recovery and homelessness prevention?
The city is committing its second round allocation from the $150 billion part of the stimulus package. The city received $32.8 million, but these funds, as I mentioned before, can only be used for people who are experiencing homelessness now, and not for homelessness prevention. The thrust is basically we need to address the crisis of people on the streets. The city's direct allocation of coronavirus relief funds has already been allocated to shelters and food distribution to help with the digital divides and other COVID-related uses. So the city will continue to develop programs and activities to spend the $32.8 million consistent with what's already been done and some new programs, as I mentioned.
The sixth question is, how is the city going to track performance measures and measure the impact of these programs?
Well, the Consolidated Plan rules have pretty straightforward guidance on what kind of information has to be collected and how many people served, et cetera. All this information gets fed into a federal database called IDIS, and each program the city has to report every year through something called a CAPER, and each annual action plan has to report what it plans to spend and how many people it expects to serve. So there's already a system set up with the federal government, and those plans are typically, they're also provided to the public for review and comment on an annual basis. Perfect.
The seventh question is, what is the process for becoming a City of San Jose grantee?
The city, I'm going to read this because I don't know this off the top of my head. The city has a single point of entry to view and apply for grant opportunities called web grants, all one word. And if anyone is interested in applying for a grant, one must register as a vendor on that site, after which point you will be able to view and apply for city grants as they become available. Grants are generally competitive in nature through a request for proposals activity, except for the narrow exception provided specifically with the COVID-related funds. More information about web grants and applying for grants can be found on the city's website.
And finally, how can I provide my comment on the Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan?
Well, first, obviously, we're taking notes at every meeting that we do. We're taking notes for this meeting. For those who may be watching this video after the fact, there are a number of ways, and I think it's written on the city's website, how you can give your input. One way, you can send comments to the housing department. It's a main email, which is housing.csj@sanjoseca.gov. You can call the department at 408-535-3860 to make an oral comment. And you can also come to the final city council hearing, because the public hearing is not yet closed. And so we're taking comments all the way through the end of that meeting on August 11th, which is next Tuesday. And then if you look at our website, you'll see that we have a number of other ways that you can provide your comments. And we're really grateful to have people provide comments. It really helps inform how the plan gets developed and how funds are used.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'd like to open it up for public comment. If you'd like to publicly comment, you can go ahead and use the raised hand feature on Zoom. Or if anyone is calling in, you can go ahead and dial *9 on your phone. Once you are selected, I will go ahead and call out your name, unmute you, and you will have a total of 2 minutes to speak and provide your comment.
I'm hoping that both Imelda and Sarah would like to say something.
All right.
Imelda raised her hand.
Imelda raised her hand.
Thank you, Imelda. Thank you for being here. It's nice to see you.
So not much of a comment, just a few questions that I have for you. So
sure.
I'm assuming this, the fiscal budgets, it's October through September?
No, it's according to the city's own fiscal year. It's not related to the federal fiscal year. It's kind of strange that way, but it goes from July 1st to June 30th.
Okay.
There are some jurisdictions who do track the federal fiscal year, and some that do calendar year, but not for the city of San Jose.
Yes, okay, that's right. I remember that now. Okay, so that means that the COVID rental assistance funding will be available to residents beginning in July.
Well, I can answer that. Imelda, hi, it's Kristen. So the rental assistance that we're making available through home-funded contracts from fiscal year 1920, we did an amendment to last year's annual action plan, and those contracts are already signed, and those providers, most of whom are serving just general families, those are starting to go into place right now. And so our usual tenant-based rental assistance is for people who were formerly homeless, but these tenant-based rental assistance contracts are for anybody who needs them, who meet the income qualifications. So those from last year are starting to be available right now. And that is, as I recall, I don't remember how much the family contracts were from last year, but I think it is $8 or $9 million total, something like that. It's a lot of money. It's everything we could cobble together. So the tenant-based rental assistance that is in this plan is for formerly homeless people, continuing with the health trust. That is a continuing contract, and we'll be recompeting that this year.
Okay. I also heard you mention that one of the objectives is to help people grow assets. Can you give me an example of how that can be done?
Kristen, you want to take that one?
Oh, sure. Yeah. With that idea, one of the things, so of course, you know, communiversities had, this is kind of the niche that Communiversity and Somos Mayfair has started in our funding pipeline. But, you know, the programs that train people for jobs or for, you know, professional development are the ones that can lead to higher incomes. And so that kind of wealth building is, we see it as the flip side of trying to make housing more affordable. And so of course that's making their family more resilient. So we do plan to put out a request for proposals later, actually in the next few months, to specifically focus on job training, for instance, and then also try to marry that with the people who are going through the job training to make sure they also have housing stability. So it would be pulling together two sources for that at the same time.
Mhm.
Probably people who have been homeless, which unfortunately won't be hard to find increasingly. But that's what we're talking about asset building. We have not ventured into like individual development accounts, into that kind of asset building. But
And then the other question is, how is rapid rehousing, the program, working? I think visually it's not very visible out in the neighborhoods, the effectiveness of that program, but I wonder if you can give me some information as to how is that working out.
Varda, do you have any of the rapid rehousing contracts?
I do. They transitioned to other analysts, but I know specifically with the COVID funding, we contracted out with 3 agencies, Bill Wilson Center, Sacred Heart, and Next Door Solutions, to expand the rapid rehousing program and get more resources out to the folks that need it. As of now, the 3-year cycle for the pre-COVID rapid rehousing contracts were closing out, and so we'll have to go into an RFP process to renew that specifically, but for COVID related rapid rehousing services, those will continue on until December 31st.
And so
Okay.
what was your question? Are they being effective, or are they working?
I was just wondering about previous programs, you know, how effective have they been, because it's quite a large amount of funding that goes for that. But as I said, visually in the neighborhoods, in the parks, on the creek and so on, that's not evidenced by the number of encampments that we see. They just keep on growing. So I wonder what's how are those programs working, since we're not visually seeing it in the neighborhoods.
Right. Well, you know, our local data indicates that for every 3 people, for every 1 person who we're successfully housing, another 3 people are becoming unhoused. So it's not the same people who are, And so we're losing ground, not just treading water. And that was pre-COVID, that data. And so the rapid rehousing, I think also hopefully will be working better, since about a year ago, the city council passed what they call the Housing Payment Equality Ordinance, which makes it illegal here to discriminate against people who have a housing voucher or a coupon. We call them coupons. So it's like Section 8, but this rapid rehousing, it's actually a city funding that helps them pay that rent. And so the HUD has given some waivers during COVID also for the programs that we are running right now, to make sure that people can get housed quickly. And so some of the rules have been suspended right now for certain pots of money, to make sure that people just can get in the units that need to. And so so some of the every little checklist item does not have to be done at this moment, but they'll kick back in a few months. So
Thank you.
You know, the rapid rehousing is working pretty well. It's just that more
Mhm.
people are becoming unhoused, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's really good information to know, because it's going to be hard to close the gap when the percentage of those that are unhoused keeps growing. So it's just a tough situation, but good data and good information that you share with me. Thank you very much. It looks like you put a lot of work into this presentation and what's behind it, right? All the data and the numbers. So appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you for everything that you do as well.
Are there any others that would like to make a public comment?
We have another attendee that's just joined. And also I know Sarah Fulton, I know is working for the department, but of course, Sarah, feel free to ask questions or make comments. As a San Jose resident, feel free. Hi, Serena, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks.
We have a small and intimate group, and if we were physically arranged, we would be in a circle with chairs.
We would.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
talking freely, ignoring the 2-minute timer. So
Absolutely.
feel free to ask any questions or offer any thoughts.
Can you catch me up to speed a little bit? Maybe like a summary of like what was discussed in the beginning, or what are some of the most important questions that have been asked?
Oh, sure. We just had a comment by Imelda Rodriguez, and basically we went through the presentation that we did yesterday at, was it yesterday?
2 days ago. 2 days ago
At City Council.
Tuesday.
Presentation. And so Imelda's questions were about the effectiveness of rapid rehousing, questions about tenant-based rental assistance and whether we were able to, contribute resources towards keeping people getting people housed. I didn't take notes.
She had a question about how do you do asset building? What does that actually mean?
Oh, right.
And we talked about
In our
job
fourth
training.
priority.
And yeah, one other thing that I wanted to say about that is it's very difficult to develop assets and save money if you're paying more than 50% of your income on housing costs. So that's one, that's what, when Kristen said, this is the flip side of housing, is how do you help people get a leg up in the world? That's through Communiversity, et cetera, and various other programs that address the needs of people who could be trained to get a better job.
Although, I am surprised by two of the statistics that you have in there. And one is that 25% of Latinos spend more than 50% on housing. Mm-hmm. And I really thought it would be higher than that from what I hear out in the neighborhoods. And so that was one data number that I thought that was surprising to me. I thought it was higher.
Well, actually,
the other one that,
sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm, the other number that was surprising was that 36% in San Jose are extremely low income. Yep. And that's pretty high. Mm-hmm. And so what that means to me is that somehow there's still a lot of affordable housing in San Jose, and I'm concerned with the new developments that are going to be built in the future years to come. And I think that's how displacement will take place, because it's just going to be impossible to be able to afford the new rentals with the newer developments.
If I could address your first comment having to do with, you were surprised that the number of households that were paying over 50% of their income on housing costs, you thought it seemed low. Well, that's severe housing costs. There's another bracket that we didn't include, which is basically the standard is people shouldn't be paying more than 30% of their income for housing costs. So there's another band of people that are paying between 30 and 50%, which is also considered a cost burden. So we only talked about the worst of the worst numbers, the people paying more than 50%.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, thanks.
There's also a paragraph in there that says, because that data, the way that HUD wants us to report it, that data is understated, we believe, for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a 5-year average, because that way it smooths the data. And for a rising cost area like ours, it's kind of inappropriately low, therefore.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it is actually 1 year older than it needs to be, because the HUD data portal opened a while ago. And so it is actually pretty old compared to current conditions. And so really this data is understated.
Yeah. But the one that is alarming, is that 36% that are extremely low, because the percentage of housing, the affordable housing that is being built, I'm not sure if it has enough for that population that are extremely low.
Actually, what's interesting is somebody I know and Imelda, you're talking about anti-displacement today. someone on my policy team pulled the 1-year census data from 2018 and got a pretty different number than that. So it's interesting how the census data may be different in different years. But I'll tell you maybe why partly as well. According to 2020 income limits, it's only 20% of the city that is considered extremely low income. However, our increases in what that cutoff is, or what's considered extremely low, has been rising 7 to 9 or 10% every year. And so it has been really going up and up and up. So every time it goes up and up and up, you know, it can change the number of people who go under the cutoff. However, you'd think more people would get covered then because the number gets higher. So I'm a little
No, that number looks
sometimes
very real to me, that 36%. It does sound real based on just in the neighborhoods that we work in.
Well, and your fun fact, that's gross income too. It's not net income. It's not your take home pay.
Oh,
so that's pre-tax. So when you're talking about 30% of your pre-tax income, you know, you have to reduce that by 28% if you pay the normal federal rate. And then your state and local.
I just want to say Serena has raised
her hand up. Yes.
So I want to give her some time and space.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to, this might make you feel better, Melda. I believe last year, it might be specific towards the NOFA funds. I can't remember the exact details, but Councilmember Davis and Councilmember Esparza, we co-wrote a memo about how a certain percent of the funding for affordable housing should go directly to ELI, the extremely low income, and I'm forgetting that percentage, but I just wanted to throw that
45.
45%, thank you so much.
45%.
Thanks. I just want to throw that out there to provide some level of comfort for you, and that like the city and the council members do understand the risk of those that are extremely low income, and so we had made it a point to set 45% of the funding specifically for that group versus very low income or low income.
Great.
Yeah.
Good to know, because
definitely.
that's going to be a good incentive for developers. Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, pretty much every project that we subsidize these days has also County Measure A money in it, and everything they do with that money is either permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless or rapid rehousing units for people who are not chronically homeless but have been homeless, or some very vulnerable special needs population. But the vast majority is homeless housing, and we are also teaming on those deals. So it seems like almost every deal has homeless housing in it, at least a portion. But that's our focus because we did so little in the past, but also just regular ELI units for families. Mm-hmm. We know that is a real need in the market.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Serena, for that point.
Yeah, of course.
So many things we could talk about.
Well, I don't want to belabor the point. I wanted, unless Sarah has a comment or question, I wonder if we would like to adjourn or there's any other major input that we need to hear. Excuse me, my dog is scratching at the door. Come on.
Any closing comments?
Yeah, we can pause a minute. Is there any areas of interest do you think are important? Any of the priorities that we've named or activities that we've named? Actually, Barda, if you could go back to that slide with the activities kind of named. If there's anything that you think it resonates or is missing, that would be good feedback. Back at the beginning where it lays out
the 4 priorities.
There, that's a good slide. That's a good example.
Yeah,
CDBG is the most flexible.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm good on my end. I've seen this before, so it looks like the priorities are well identified and funded. So yeah, no comments on my end on this one.
Got it. Thank you, Imelda. Home is pretty prescribed what you have to do with it.
Hopwa.
HOP was very prescribed what you have to do with it. So it's really a community development block grant that's more wide open.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you
so much for joining us.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being in our virtual circle with the chairs.
Yeah.
We really
Have a good
appreciate
evening.
it.
Thank you, guys.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good
everybody.
evening, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.